Welcome back to CIA Declassified. Today we enter the theater of the mind. We're stepping into the 1950s, the high water mark of the ideological Cold War. The agency realized that traditional espionage had its limits. To truly dismantle an empire, you had to attack its internal logic. This was a time when the Office of Policy Coordination was given a blank check to experiment with the very fabric of social reality, creating a world where no one could be sure if the riot they joined was a genuine movement or a carefully choreographed agency production. Imagine a world where the news is a script, the protesters are actors, and the enemy attack was staged by the very people claiming to be the victims. This was the dawn of sophisticated perception management. This was the psychological operation known as AEFLAG. How did this operation get its name? The cryptonym AEFLAG follows the agency's factual AE diagraph system. In the CIA's internal filing, the AE prefix was specifically reserved for operations and assets located within the Soviet Union or targeting Soviet interest. The suffix flag was a direct literal reference to false flag operations. The agency utilized this designation for projects that involved the creation of dummy political organizations and the staging of provocations that would be blamed on the KGB or local communist parties to incite public outrage. AEFLAG was the agency's masterclass in the strategy of tension. The project utilized black radio stations that broadcast from secret locations in West Germany, pretending to be domestic rebel groups inside the Eastern Bloc. A quote from a 1954 covert action memorandum: "The objective is to create a climate of fear and distrust within the target government, leading them to take repressive measures that further alienate the population." End quote. Records indicate the agency produced counterfeit leaflets that mimicked the style of official Communist Party circulars but contained subtle errors or inflammatory demands designed to confuse the local bureaucracy. A quote from Cord Meyer, the chief of the International Organizations Division: "In the struggle for the mind, the most effective truth is the one the subject thinks they discovered themselves." End quote. AEFLAG files describe the staged provocation where agency-funded assets would spray paint anti-religious slogans on churches and blame the local communist youth leagues to turn the religious population against the state. The project utilized rumor-mongering networks, paying marketplace vendors and taxi drivers in cities like Warsaw and Prague to spread specific fabricated stories about government food shortages. Documentation shows the agency experimented with ghost organizations, fictional student groups that existed only on paper, to issue manifestos that forced the Soviet government to waste resources hunting for non-existent rebels. Logs confirm the testing of visual deception using high-altitude balloons to drop Western luxury items over Soviet workers' districts to highlight the economic disparity in a way that felt like a spontaneous gift from the sky. The agency tracked the breakdown of social trust by monitoring how many people reported their neighbors to the secret police following an AEFLAG misinformation campaign. AEFLAG researchers developed psychological inoculation techniques to protect Western diplomats from falling for similar Soviet disinformation. Reports describe controlled leaks where the agency would give true information to a Soviet double agent but surround it with 90% fabricated AEFLAG data to discredit the source. Technical logs confirm the development of miniature printing presses that were smuggled into the East inside the panels of cars to allow for the domestic production of false flag pamphlets. The project utilized agent provocateurs who were instructed to join legitimate labor strikes and incite violence, specifically to trigger a heavy-handed police response. Records show the use of bait-and-switch narratives where a genuine accident, like a factory explosion, was amplified by AEFLAG assets as a deliberate act of government sabotage. The program tested auditory distortion using directional speakers to project the sound of distant gunfire into neighborhoods to simulate the start of a coup. Documentation reveals the testing of infiltrated mailing lists where the agency sent fabricated internal party memos to mid-level Soviet officials to trigger purges within their own ranks. Technical teams developed invisible ink messages that would only appear when exposed to a specific common household chemical used to coordinate AEFLAG cells. The agency utilized cultural sabotage, funding modern art and literature through front organizations to subtly undermine the socialist realism aesthetic enforced by the Kremlin. Logs mention operational surveys where agents would interview refugees to see which AEFLAG lies had been most widely believed as truth. The project developed standardized agitator kits for field operatives containing disguises, false IDs, and pre-written scripts for inciting street-level arguments. Documentation shows that AEFLAG researchers studied crowd contagion, testing how many paid shills were needed in a crowd of 1,000 to start a full-scale riot. The agency funded research into linguistic subversion, creating new slang terms that mocked communist terminology and spreading them via pirate radio. Records confirm the creation of false defectors, operatives who fled to the east with fabricated secrets designed to send Soviet counterintelligence on a wild goose chase. Technical logs describe photographic manipulation, the early use of airbrushing to remove or add people to official photos to create the appearance of internal party conflict. The program proved that double binding a target, giving them two bad choices, both of which resulted in a loss of face, was the most effective AEFLAG strategy. The agency maintained script rooms where psychological experts would draft personal diaries of fictional dissidents to be discovered by foreign journalists. AEFLAG files mention radio inclusion, where agency transmitters would overpower legitimate Soviet signals to insert a single confusing sentence into a news broadcast. Documentation proves the agency tested post-hypnotic triggers in assets to ensure they could perform a false flag act and then genuinely pass a polygraph by forgetting their instructions. Reports describe economic panic testing, where the agency would flood a city with high-quality counterfeit currency to trigger sudden inflation and local anger. The project utilized sympathetic journalist briefings, providing exclusive tips to Western reporters that were actually AEFLAG plants designed to go global. Agency psychologists developed ego threat strategies, creating fake scandals around Soviet leaders' personal lives to make them act erratically in public. Records indicate the use of clandestine graffiti teams that worked in the dead of night to create the illusion of a massive, widespread resistance movement. The agency studied cognitive dissonance, finding that people would believe an AEFLAG lie even in the face of contrary evidence if the lie appealed to their existing grievances. A quote from a 1961 OPC director's review: "We are not merely reporting the news in Eastern Europe, we are composing it." End quote. Technical logs confirm the creation of dosed propaganda, where leaflets were treated with mild skin irritants so that anyone caught holding them would become physically agitated. The program explored the use of subliminal messaging and film strips smuggled into the East for private home viewings. AEFLAG researchers developed a pseudoscience curriculum spreading fake academic papers to the East to stall Soviet scientific progress in key areas. Records show the agency experimented with religious vision hoaxes using mirrors and projectors to simulate miracles that contradicted state atheism. The agency maintained a phony letters to the editor department to ensure Western publications appeared to have massive support from behind the Iron Curtain. Internal reports show the CIA spent over $5 million in 1950s currency just on the airdrop logistics for AEFLAG leaflets. The operation utilized the mailed from within technique, where agents smuggled letters into the Soviet Union just to mail them locally so they bore internal postmarks. AEFLAG operatives utilized balloons of liberty, which were specifically engineered to burst at high altitudes over major Soviet urban centers. A quote from a declassified 1958 analysis: "The success of a provocation is measured by the severity of the enemy's overreaction." End quote. Agency records show they created a fake anti-Stalinist movement in Ukraine that was entirely funded by the Office of Policy Coordination. The project successfully planted over 300 fabricated stories in European newspapers during its first year of operation. AEFLAG was coordinated with Operation Red Sox, which parachuted Eastern European exiles back into their homelands to act as agitators. Logs confirm the creation of self-destructing radio equipment to ensure AEFLAG transmission sites could never be traced. CIA files describe the straw man protocol, where the agency would fund a weak opposition group specifically so the Soviet government would focus on them instead of real threats. Operational manifests show the use of infiltrated trade unions to distribute AEFLAG talking points during legitimate labor disputes. The agency utilized syllabus tampering, printing fake educational materials that subtly introduced democratic concepts into Soviet-style classrooms. Logs confirm the development of long-range acoustic deception, simulating the sounds of cheering crowds to make small protests seem massive. The program employed former propaganda experts from World War II to help age documents so they looked like old suppressed government files. Documentation shows the agency created a fictional inner circle of Soviet defectors who gave fake interviews to Radio Free Europe. The project utilized social ostracism mapping to identify which Soviet officials were most vulnerable to being framed as Western spies. AEFLAG researchers discovered that emotional outrage was more effective than logical argument for spreading clandestine narratives. Records show the agency printed fake ration cards to cause chaos and hoarding in Soviet-controlled Berlin. The program utilized ghostwriters for some of the most famous underground dissident publications of the 1960s. Internal memos show the agency evaluated the cringe factor of their own propaganda to ensure it didn't sound too much like Western advertising. When we look at the files of AEFLAG, there are some very heavy redactions, such as in the section titled Domestic Application of Perception Management Protocols. That specific file contains the highest density of redactions in the entire AE series, with some analysts noting that page after page is nothing but a solid black rectangle. Why is the agency hiding the home front scripts? There is a long-standing whisper in the newsroom regarding the redactions in this particular operation. Investigators like Udo Ulfkote, Ulfkotte, and researchers of Operation Mockingbird suggest these blacked out pages detail the domestic infiltration of American media. The gossip among journalism veterans is that these redactions aren't about foreign enemies, but about the names of active U.S. news anchors and editors who were asset mapped to repeat AEFLAG scripts to the American public during the 60s and 70s. In the dark, dusty corners of European deep state history, there is a persistent speculation linking AEFLAG to Operation Gladio. The theory suggests the heaviest redactions cover the strategy of tension applied to Western allies. The gossip is that certain documents contain the blueprints for false flag bombings used to discredit left-wing movements in Italy and France, which the agency continues to hide to protect current relations with European intelligence services. A recurring theory in activist circles posits that the redactions hide the script templates for domestic protest infiltration. People cite the FBI's COINTELPRO as the physical arm, but speculate that AEFLAG provided the psychological identity scripts. The rumor is that the blacked out sections describe how to create phony radicals to burn down buildings during peaceful marches, ensuring the public demands more police intervention, a tactic many believe is still being automated by algorithms today. Was AEFLAG a success? Tactically, it was a hall of mirrors. It successfully forced the Soviet Union to spend billions on internal security and counter-deception. Strategically, it was a complete success. It proved that the reality of a population is a malleable asset. The project was a success because it pioneered non-kinetic warfare, the ability to win a battle without firing a shot. It successfully established the blueprint for modern color revolutions and the systematic destabilization of unfriendly regimes. The project also succeeded in creating a generation of psychological operatives who understood that perception is more valuable than truth. Furthermore, it proved that the most effective way to control a society is to manage the information they use to form their opinions. It was a success that fundamentally changed the definition of national security to include information dominance. The project successfully demonstrated that manufactured chaos could be more stable for agency interests than a genuine, unpredictable democracy. It also proved that a lie, if repeated through enough independent sources, becomes an immovable fact for the general public. Ultimately, it birthed the modern era of cognitive infiltration, where the goal is not to convince the enemy, but to make it impossible for them to even agree on what is real. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the Mirror-Riot led to quite a few, such as automated misinformation cycles. The rumor-mongering networks of AEFLAG are the direct ancestors of bot farms used for political campaigning and stock market manipulation. Perception management software. The script room protocols led to predictive analytics that can determine exactly which headline will trigger a specific emotional response in a demographic. Deep fake and media manipulation. The airbrushing and false audio work of the project provided the foundation for modern AI-generated video, making it impossible to distinguish between a real event and a fabricated provocation. And psychological destabilization tactics. The strategy of tension used in Eastern Europe is now used in corporate takeovers and social engineering to demoralize competitors. AEFLAG reminds us that the truth is the first casualty of any conflict. In 2026, when you see a story that makes your blood boil or a video that confirms your worst fears, remember the Mirror-Riot. The agency understood that if you control the script, you control the actors. You are not just a spectator in the digital age. In the eyes of AEFLAG, you are a reaction unit to be triggered by the right narrative. The riot isn't happening in the streets, it's happening in your synapses, fueled by a lie that was custom built for your brain. The most dangerous flag isn't the one flying over a building. It's the false flag flying inside your head. We are all living in a theater where the director is invisible and the script is written in real time by an algorithm designed to keep us divided. Your beliefs are the soil in which their seeds are planted, and the harvest is your own compliance. Even your skepticism is often just a different track in the same pre-recorded symphony. The mirror doesn't reflect your reality. It projects the one they want you to see. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine the operation involving crypto AG. It's also called Minerva. For decades, the world's governments bought their encryption from a neutral Swiss company. We'll uncover how the agency and the BND secretly owned the firm, ensuring that every secret message sent by the enemy was delivered directly to Washington. This operation, a masterpiece of structural infiltration, redefined the meaning of global surveillance. Join us next time for the neutrality trap. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.